I have two beautiful children, 6 and 2, and I'm looking forward to raising them here in Keokuk and the history that we've got. So, again, thank you all for coming today. I do patron services work at the library and a lot of local history and genealogy research. So if you have any research questions that you can think of, feel free to give me a call. The library has occupied 4 spaces in its history, which the history of the library dates back to the 1850s and even a little bit before that. The citizens started becoming concerned that they needed a reading room. They needed a place to go for, books and news and information. So the first buildings were actually in the middle of the 300 block of Main Street, which is now, the space that they occupy is now held by Casey's and the mall properties. The second location was actually next door to the first. I'm going to get a little laser here to work. These buildings right here were home to the first libraries. And then the second, of course, was the large, imposing brick structure that many people are familiar with on Main Street. And then, of course, the last and final location that we have right now is the one at 210 North 5th. Does anybody remember the old library? Anybody here that has been to the imposing brick structure? That's what I tend to think of it as. I've asked some people if they remember the old library, and of course I'm referring to the first ones in the 1850s, but I tried. In the fall of 1851, library services got off to a very rocky start. Judge Miller and Judge Love were among 2 of the individuals who became interested in forming a library organization. They started collecting stock and materials, but nothing checked out. There were no guidelines for a librarian, there were no guidelines for checking anything out, and this attempt failed shortly after it got started. But it was the groundwork for what would become the library. In September of 1854, another attempt at services began and included an itemization for the establishment of a reading room. The first libraries in this area were reading rooms, not so much as libraries where things check out like we think of today, but rather a place where people could come and read the newspapers, they could obtain information and books that maybe they wouldn't otherwise have access to. And it definitely was not a place for children like we think of a library today. Now, you can't read all of the itemizations on here, but there's a lot of things for salaries, for someone to care for the property, someone to clean it, curator for museum-type artifacts, several different items that they tried to take into consideration for starting the library. But of course, that attempt would also fail. The next attempt that we have is the Gate City Literary Institute. We're finally starting to get somewhere. In 1856, this organization brought several presentations by famous names of the day, including Wendell Phillips, P.T. Barnum, Ralph Waldo Emerson, and a gentleman named Mark Twain. All of those individuals who came to do presentations for this society, they were very well received, some more so than others, but the most popular event that the Gate City Literary Institute held was the burlesque opera troupe. It was more highly attended than any other event. These comedic parodies were not what we think of as a burlesque opera today. They were quite different, but still I think it speaks a lot of the society at the time that was what they found to be of interest. We like to think of times gone by as perhaps very prim and proper, but not always. So, on November 27th of 1863, another newspaper article makes a call for a library association to be held at the courthouse on Friday at 7:30 for the purpose of organizing a library association. So, it was open to the public, anyone could come, and it was headed by Reverend Willis G. Craig. An association was formed and committees were created. Stock was once again collected, and another meeting was to be held when they had collected $500 in stock. They did meet that goal of collecting $500 in stock, so they were able to move forward with the next steps of organizing the library. Mr. R.F. Bauer was a member of the first board of directors, and he would later go on to serve as president of the association. Patrick Gibbons, William Fulton, A. Hagney, Reverend George Thatcher, and J.L. Rice would be others on the board who would go on to serve in some capacity in the library's existence. The library would begin to rent the room above Yonkers in the middle of the south side of the 300 block of Main. This would later be named as 82 Main Street and would then become 310 Main Street as the numbers changed. It was about 35 by 25 feet. So the library was actually in the upper floor with the store being in the lower floor. This photo of Yonkers is from the 1860s, and the Yonkers building would later move to the corner of 5th and Main, which until the last few years had been occupied by Johnson Schmidt. We now have the Dam Museum in that building. So it's changed hands a couple of times, but for the most part, it was Yonkers through the majority of its history. I don't know if everybody in the back can see, but the Yonkers sign is right here. So this would be looking down Main Street. This cigar shop you can kind of see in one of the other photos that I've got here. The library opened for business on June 1st, 1864, and held 2,479 items, including books, periodicals, historical artifacts, and numerous curiosities. But once again, there were no items being checked out as there were no guidelines for circulation. They didn't have, they didn't have a librarian ready to say, you can check this out, you can't check this out. Of course, no patron registrations the way we do today. They had many books of high quality, so maybe it was a good thing that they were, restricted to keeping them in the library. This newspaper is actually a sample copy from December 22nd, 1864, the New York Herald. I believe the library received the New York Herald, so it's very possible that this library actually had a copy of this particular issue. The library moved in May of 1865 after they outgrew the space in Yonkers, the 35 by 25 foot section of space. The new hall was a little bit bigger at 79 by 25 and was above George C. Anderson's bank. The blue building here is George Anderson's bank, and the library would have been most likely on the upper floor. The red building is the original Yonkers building, and then over here is that cigar shop that I was talking about.
That was in 300 or 500?
300 block. So this would be kind of the block where Casey's is right now. J.L. Rice died on August 21st, 1879. You might remember that name as one of the earliest board of directors members. He was 48 years old at the time of his death, and at the time of his death, his will stated that the library was to receive $10,000 toward a new library. I can't recall the exact calculations of how much that translates to in current figures, but it's a lot. It was a tremendous gift for the library, and his will specified that the building was to be centrally located. He wanted to have the building on Main Street so that it could be used for business purposes in the lower level, and the library to be on the upper level. Businesses below, of course, would support some of the expenses that the library would have, and it would be available to citizens as they were going about their business downtown. Subscriptions and donations raised an additional $10,000, and the association came up short by $5,000. H.C. Hueskamp loaned the association the money to be repaid over a course of 10 years with no interest. So again, a tremendous gift given to the library and the citizens of Keokuk. In the process of determining locations for the library, many possible sites were discussed. This particular piece was written dated Saturday, July 31st, 1880. I won't read you the entire thing. You can catch bits and pieces of it, but I would like to mention one part. The alley in that locality is notorious in a very unsavory condition. Filth, slop, and other fermenting compounds, as well as leviathan manure piles, which volcano-like consistently issue nauseating fumes, ornament the thoroughfare. These exhalations, wafted through the library windows, could not be mistaken for eau de cologne, and would be anything but pleasant to persons afflicted with pulmonary complaints. I'd love to see something written in today's paper, and by means of an editorial or, I'm sure you probably don't get manure piles downtown. But despite protests, the building did move forward. The cornerstone was laid by George Van Son, the Grand Master of Iowa Masons, on July 4th, 1881. The cornerstone from that building now rests on the lawn next to the library. If you've ever gone into the library to drop off a book at the book drop, little book drop depository is over here, and just right across the alley is the cornerstone here. You will notice that it says 5881 as the year. The 5881 is actually a translation from the Masonic organization, meaning Anno Lucius, which means the year of light. If you add 4,000 years to the current year, you will get Anno Lucius, the year of light. So whatever the current year is, add 4,000 to get that date, and that's how they came up with 5881 as the year on the cornerstone. Took some investigation to figure that out. We couldn't quite figure out why the 5881 was in place. I had some theories from individuals, maybe it was alien life forms, but we did finally come to a determination. So here in the red circle, you can see the cornerstone of the old building, and again, this is now resting on the library property.
Angela,
Yes.
anybody ever open that stone?
Absolutely. Right here, I've got some fabulous examples of that.
Cool.
And when I was talking to Sue, she did mention, she was curious about where some of these artifacts were kept. We do have a file of the items from the cornerstone of the library. It's kept in the safe room, so if anyone's curious about any of the other items that were in the cornerstone, we do have those available to be looked at. But this particular card here is a business card from H.M. Laurie. This card, actual size, is probably about this big. So it's really astonishing to me to be able to look at this card and think the printing processes that they had in that day, that they cut it into this leaf, the precision that they had for these little cards is just amazing. If you've ever been to a doctor or a dentist, you have no doubt received one of these little reminder cards. They had them back then too. And they asked you to be prompt so that your appointment may not interfere with that of another. This card from the Howe Scales Company, I'm not sure exactly what business would have utilized the Howe Scales, but somewhere in the city, someone had a Howe scale, and they brought it to the library cornerstone. Now, there's nothing especially remarkable about this side of the card itself, but if you flip it over, there is a lightweight and a heavyweight. Now, the curious thing about this is the exact same card. The card folded up this way for the lightweight, and then the bottom unfolded to show the picture of the heavyweight. Which, you know, having looked at this shortly after having my second child, I was not especially fond of it. But, again, you know, just kind of a punch at the seriousness that we often think of in the 1800s. The 1882 expenses on this slide are also shown in their current 2016 conversions. The amount shown right here is not actually the amount that the library pays for these services today. Rather, this is just an estimation based on the conversion rate. So they were paying $6.40 for sundries, which is about $142. The gas bill is only 26 bucks. You know, of course, that's $575 in today's currency, but still quite a small sum if you consider that that was their gas bill for the entire year. So they finally got to the point where they could cross the finish line and get this building open and ready for use. It was completed and ready for occupancy on February 24th, 1883. The building was 33 by 140, which is a far cry from where they started in that tiny little hall. The lower level of the library was occupied by Tonable and Bartruff Clothiers, John Helwig's shoe repair shop, and Vic Story's barber shop. It was sort of an old-time mini-mall, all in one place. You could go, get some clothes, get your shoes, get your haircut, go upstairs, enjoy a good read, catch up on the news of the day. Here you can see a little bit of the lay of the land for the library. The Main Street side of the building. Newspapers, stoves, and reading tables were in the middle of the room, and the entrance was actually in the back corner down here. So the entrance to the library was actually at the alley on the third side, on the street side instead of on the Main Street side. In 1894, the legislature passed an act to stimulate new public libraries and to promote those that were already in existence. The will of J.L. Rice actually prohibited the sale of the library directly to the city, so the Library Association could not sell it directly to Keokuk. A vote by the general public was taken to lease the building to the city at a cost of $1,500 per year. This passed on April 2nd, 1894, and at that time the library held 9,370 volumes. On July 16th of 1894, the lease was accepted by the city and the Keokuk Public Library was born. So it has been 120 years, is that right? Yes, since the library was established as a free public library.
Pardon me, Angela. At this point, are we talking about a lending library, or is it still a come in and read
At
library?
this point, they were able to lend out some items. They had finally established some guidelines for librarian. They had finally established some guidelines for circulation. I'm not familiar with the fine structure at the time, if there was one, but yeah, they were able to lend items out. John Craig took office shortly after the establishment of the Free Public Library and served as was known as the longest serving board president until his death in February of 1936. There's a couple of photographs that we have of John Craig at the library, and we're very glad to have had him serving on the board for as long as he did. He brought a lot of amazing things to the library. These views of the old library and the current Main Street location are looking southward toward what would have been the library's location. You can see the Judge Curtis statue. Here is the library, the front Main Street side of the library. And then this would be 3rd Street and Main Street here with the river on that side. Again, the exact same view. It looks quite a bit different. A little bit bittersweet to see. I mean, there's been a lot of change in that area. These views, if you've been to the old library, you may recognize some of these. This is the 2nd floor reading room at the library. This middle table that you see right here is actually still at our library. This is it in the lower level. We use it for some storage. We use it for projects that we have in the basement. It's still in use. It's been a good table. Here you can see another view of the 3rd Main Library. Come on in, have a seat.
Thank you.
Glad to have you. This interior of the 3rd Main Library, you can see the portrait of Mark Twain here in the center. We still have the portrait of Mark Twain, actually. It is over in the youth services area. There's a couple of study carrels over on the side of the library. It's just above those study carrels. You can also see a little book cart right here. We still have that in service at the current library. And I'm not sure which one of the chairs it was, but just the other day I sat in one when I was in talking with Emily about some new things at the library that we have coming up. So a lot of the features that we had at the old library at 3rd and Main, we are still using and keeping them, they work very well. They were built to last, so we're glad to have those also. Here's another view of the library, and you might remember the old card catalogs. I may be a young individual, but I do still remember card catalogs. We have them growing up in school, and I'm very fond of them. The only part I'm not so fond of is if you get a hold of it and pull it out too fast, and the whole drawer snaps down to the floor, and you're in tears. We currently keep some of our patron registrations in there, so I have actually had experience in dumping the whole drawer on the floor. Again, you can see that green top table. It would be one of these two here. I'm not sure which one. Children's services at the public library were actually started through a tradition that began with Miss Ann Whitmire. She started a free school in Keokuk, and she had over 200 children in attendance. She ordered $30 worth of books on credit for these school children, and the father of Mrs. William Worth Belknap overheard the transaction, and he insisted on paying for the books. After that, the tradition was started that books for the children and youth services books were given through donation and sponsorships, which is a tradition that we still carry on today. A lot of the summer reading program activities, a lot of the children's books are given as memorials. They're given by local businesses, and it's a great way for the communities to support the reading efforts and especially youth literacy at the library. Here you can see a little bit of the 3rd and Main Library's youth services area. They had a variety of books back in the alcove once it was started. In June of 1900, they did develop that reading room at the back of the library, and in 1938, Frank Knight added a little bit more to this effort. He contributed a donation to establish the reading room. The record player, although not an exact copy, was very similar to one that was given to the youth services area in 1958 by the JCs. In 1878, Western Union began to be housed at the Keokuk Library on the main floor, and in July of 1957, Western Union moved out of the first floor. It was one of the longest lasting renting facilities to be held at the lower level of the library. This photo taken in 1963 is likely one of the last known photos of the old library. It was taken by Leo Gradell. It's an aerial view of the south side of the 200 block of Main Street, excuse me, you can see right here, this would be 3rd Street, and this is Main right here. This is, in that other photo, this is right where the movie theater marquee is, and then this is the Casey's lot right here. Casey's would be about right there, and then the parking lot for the mall is now here, and the mall is in the back. This building down here would be the Irving Phillips building, I believe. On April 17th of 1864, I got myself confused there. 1964, excuse me. This aerial view of the downtown Keokuk area was taken by Leo Gradell. This was the urban renewal era. And of course, there was a fire that took place at Gem City Transfer. It was suspected to have begun at Gem City Transfer, which you can see the columns here. Over 20 buildings were damaged or completely destroyed by the fire, and the damage to the fire had even extended to many homes on the north side of Keokuk as the fire and the embers flew through the air. So the old library, you can see here at the bottom, and then this would be Main Street running down this way. The demolition of the 3rd and Main Library began in 1965. Tanya and I have had many discussions about this photo, and we finally came to the conclusion that it seems to have been taken from the alley across 3rd Street. So here's the back corner of the old library. This would be the entrance to the library here. This is the alley, and 3rd Street running this way, and Main Street running here. So you can kind of get an idea of the length of the library building as it ran along 3rd Street.
Angela, where did that fire start?
It was suspected to have been at Gem City Transfer.
Thank you.
I know there's a lot of discussion still about that fire, a lot of suspicions, a lot of questions, but as best they can tell, it was begun at Gem City Transfer. And I don't know that they ever determined the cause, other than an explosion. This comparison is from 1950s downtown Main Street to the 2000s Main Street as shown by Google Maps. The library would be here, and this is the hotel, and you can kind of see the same shape, same outline here, so the library would have been located right here. That is currently the marquee for the movie theater. So next time you drive down Main Street, you can kind of put together exactly where that location would have been. But you can see that so much of the landscape of downtown Keokuk has changed as the years go by. I'm not terribly fond of this slide. I think it speaks a lot about the history of our town, that the downtown area has changed so very, very much. The Irwin Phillips building, you can see that would have been right here. You can kind of see the sidewalk going down to the riverfront. You can see the terrace fire, damage, sometimes vandalism, and of course the whole urban renewal situation. It's just been a very, big change in 50 years. We start to see the Keokuk Library take shape, the new Keokuk Library take shape in the late 1950s. They started talking about organizing a new library building. The old library was thought to be antiquated and was considered inaccessible for elderly and handicapped patrons. So even in the 1950s, long before the ADA movement and the legal issues that we have worked with today, we started to see people in the area thinking that the building needed to become more accessible to people of all ages. So once again, the Hughescamp family began a fund with about a third of the total cost that was needed for the library. The city raised nearly the entire remaining amount without a bond issue. Now, I'm not exactly sure how all of that worked, but I find it amazing that the entire city came together to meet this need. If you think of today trying to get, to get something presented and passed, there's so many people that are involved that it takes a long time. But the library was that important to the city that they wanted to get a new building up and running and get a new building ready so that it could be used.
Here, here.
In the 1950s, the total cost was $310,000, which is about $2.6 million if converted to 2016 standards. You can see a little bit of the early foundation work. You can see the old Baptist church here in the back that had a congregational. Okay, I'm sorry, I don't know why I was thinking Baptist. That had a bit of a arson issue. Yes, there were a couple of troubles with that. Take note of this large brick structure to the side. Remember that structure, you'll see it again. Here you can see the library foundation as it was viewed from the 400 block of Concert. They're starting to pour some of the foundation. The white building in the picture is still the apartment building that's behind the library parking lot. You can see a little bit more of the groundwork. There's a slight bit of the courthouse and old medical college at the side. You can see it right here, and over here you can see a little bit of it also. You can start to see the round room taking shape. The round figure for the library at that time was such a unique feature. It was actually featured in several library magazines and several architectural features as well. So once again, you can see that white apartment building and this incredible shadow from that large building next to the side. And there again, you can see the courthouse and the old medical building. This would be the alley side of the library. This is again the round room here, and the side entrance or exit to the round room here that would come out onto the alley. This is the almost finished product. I love the vehicles. I absolutely love them. The coloring is off just a little bit, but I really love the cars. I mean, the vibrant colors, they're just amazing. And once again, this very large house. And there again is the large house. I keep coming back to this because this house is absolutely massive. If you look at, next time you're over at the library, take a look between the alley and the White House that stands on the library property next on the other side of the alley. And you will see that this massive structure stood in that tiny, tiny little space. It's just amazing. This is a real estate sale card from, I believe it was 1962. There's barely inches in between these two houses. The White House, now correct me if I'm wrong, Joanne, I think I've got this right. The White House was actually occupied by Miss Nan Smith, the second woman to pass the bar in Iowa. Is that right, Dwayne?
That's correct.
Okay, thanks, sir.
In the 1870s or 80s.
Okay, 1870s or 80s, occupied by Miss Nan Smith. This White House, as we refer to it, still stands, and the library uses it for storage and, kind of in an overflow capacity, but it is still standing. These are some of the interior pictures from what would be the circulation desk in the construction of the new library. A lot of these are facing up. I guess they thought that the ceiling was especially fascinating. This wall is what we can assume to be the back corner of the director's office right now. In the renovation that would take place in the 90s, they extended that wall out, so it looks quite a bit different today. So this is some more interior finishing work we believe to be the back of the staff office wall. And again, some more of the ceiling. A little bit more interior finishing work. This is presumed to be the back wall of the library. Looks different now, of course, there's materials in, but this would be the back entrance to the library, and it now leads down to the art center. It was not structurally that way in the 60s, but that was added on in the 90s. The library opened in August of 1962. This photo was submitted to the Daily Gate City, and it was reported that there were over 300 checkouts before noon on the first day that the library was open. Ms. Doris Foley was the librarian at the time, and she reported that fact. And I'm thinking now about how many checkouts we have in a day, and I couldn't imagine 300 before noon. So again, that tells you exactly how much the library was appreciated. Of course, everybody wants to get in and see the new thing. Everybody wants to see it new and shiny. Yes, to get their new cards, everybody wanted to come in and see exactly what this new great thing was. It's been very well received since then, and we continue today. It's great. Here, even though it's in black and white microfilm print, you can kind of see the library and the new children's area. This table, still in use. This book truck, still in use. We continue to use the same things that we have back in those times. They work so very well for us. Actually, just here recently, this last week, we got a brand new, bright, shiny orange cart for the youth services area. On a daily basis, we have so many kids' books circulating. We had to get a new cart. We had to get a bigger cart. So I really think that's a great thing. It speaks a lot about the kids' area and how popular it is.
And to put it back up just a second.
Sure.
Maybe I'm just imagining things, but you said the children's library on Third Street was upstairs.
Mm-hmm.
I can distinctly remember going into the lower level, my mom letting me get books, and then we climbed up
Mm-hmm.
upstairs. Did it go over there?
I vaguely did, I was thinking that too.
Going in.
Having not been there, I'm not certain.
I think at one point, yeah, we were.
I'm not sure. Everything that I found has spoken to the fact that the library was upstairs, but all of what I have is newspapers and,
I remember.
specific historical details, so it could be different.
I thought I should have asked whether, the back part I thought was, like read or reference, that you didn't know it. But I can remember getting my books and went upstairs and she parked me in the big rocking chair by the window. And I would sit reading and she'd get her books. And she'd sit at the table with books.
I'm not sure.
I think I remember when.
I've heard a lot of people talk about the different
I
floors.
remember going to the basement.
Yeah.
Well, it was just a.
Well, and there was also some talk about an alligator, that they had
Yes.
museums and
Yes.
several things of that
And then,
nature. So
but you
there's a
couldn't
lot.
go up the stairs to check books out, because my mom did the same thing. She put me where I would read, and then she checked hers out, and then we go home. But I can remember.
I'll have to look into that a little bit more and see if I can find some, especially, in the 40s and 50s and, the later years of the library. I'll have to look and see if they've got any articles.
I just remember Doris Foley guiding you gently to where she thought you should be reading. I can remember that.
You come over and sit.
Yeah, well, she would just say, "Oh, come here, Robin," she'd sit me down and we'd be reading.
Now, did they have the rocking chair at that time?
Oh,
The
yeah.
big
Yeah,
one
always
still there?
They always had
I
a
thought
rocking
so.
chair sometimes, because my dad used to sit in the one over there and do the New York Times, we had the New York Times crossword. He offered to pay for it, but they said it was okay.
Well, it's over there, the one now is the one,
Yeah.
well, it wasn't painted, it was just.
Yeah.
Just a chair.
Yeah. Well, it's been
I
painted,
remember.
unpainted,
It
repainted.
finished, I think towards May, but it was, right when we were looking at it.
Okay. Yeah, stop by the library and we can kind of look through some things and I'll see what I can come up with.
They're so cold.
changes over the years, but really, we have had very few directors in the library's history. They came on as director and they stayed, which is amazing considering that, sometimes it can be challenging. There's a lot of things that go on for directors in a small town library. This is Miss Nanny Fulton. She's shown with an unknown assistant. We don't know her assistant's name. She had several assistants, so we can't even try to pinpoint down exactly what this young woman's name would have been. Nanny Fulton served as the library's director from 1897 until 1947. So 50 years this woman served as the library's director. Before Miss Fulton, Otto Lyman and Andrew Lefebvre served as early librarians. There were some other individuals that held a position in the early years of the library when things were just getting started. But really, there's been very few directors. Carl Kadash Jr. and Lillian Frischnecht served after Nanny Fulton's terms of service were over. They were there until 1956. Doris Foley took over the position in 1956 and served the library until the early 70s. In this photo, she holds a bill of fare for the Ivans House, which was dated 1956.
She was wonderful, Rachel.
I had a hard time finding out biographical information for these librarians. They're very difficult people to track down.
She was wonderful.
So remind me to write my biography so people can learn about me when I'm gone. Shirley Dick is probably one of the librarians that many people remember. She served the library for 22 years. Prior to coming to the library, Ms. Dick served as the director of the Kissimmee Area Library in 1967 and then was the director of the library through 1997. During Ms. Dick's years at the library became automated. We got to a point where we could put the barcodes on things and we could check things out, and the circulation was so much easier. Don Tillett was also a director between Doris Foley and between Doris and Shirley. Miss Emily Lawmeyer was named as the head librarian and served from 1998 until 2006. During her time at the library, we renovated under a very large-scale fundraising effort. This added on the art center, it added on the elevators in the back, it added on the parking lot, it added on so many amazing features of the library, made it much more handicap accessible, which then led to accreditation. So that's one of the highest standards in library service. We're very, very proud of the fact that our library is completely accessible in all aspects. You can come in, there's, it's a zero grade enter, not zero grade, but no level changing, you come right in and everything is easy to access. This photo was taken shortly after the library opened in the 60s. This next one was taken before the renovation project in the 90s, and then this lower one was taken within the last few years. All generally of the circulation area. Again, you can see the circulation area and how much it's changed. We took the orange off the floor, and nobody likes the orange carpet. I thought about asking them to put it back. But you can also see that the portraits that we have painted here, we've still got those on display. Miss Eversole's paintings.
From here in town.
Mhm.
Yeah, she was
And we also still have the book cart right by the front door. You can't see it here, it's kind of back tucked in the corner, but books for sale, always books for sale. A couple more portraits of the interior of the library, generally the same area, looking either around or toward the back of the library. I was talking to Sue within the last couple of days about the amount of display and image content. In this older portrait, or photo, you can't really see much. It's pretty stark. In the next one, we've got a little bit more welcoming environment. Now, of course, everything has pictures and everything's in color and everything is very vibrant. Much different situation when you come into the library. Here is our current library staff. This was taken in 2014 at the reading of the proclamation. In this photo, left to right is Mindy, Monica, Terry, Emily, myself, Tammy, and Tanya. So we have Terry, Tammy, Tanya, Mindy, Monica, Angela, and Emily. So we've right in here. This was taken right before I had my daughter Lauren in 2014. The Keokuk Area Library was an effort between the Iowa and Illinois libraries to bring services to both states. The Mississippi Valley Film Cooperative also established video access for these collections, and Keokuk Area Library ended in the mid-70s when Shirley Day became the director of the library. So this was kind of one of the first opportunities for interlibrary loan, the first opportunities for borrowing between different libraries. And we're also starting to get into the audiovisual era, where we've got VHS, eventually to become DVDs. Regional library cards were an extension of the Keokuk Area Library Association. Patrons could borrow materials from Iowa, Illinois, Missouri. Unfortunately, reciprocal borrowing did end at the close of 2015 basically due to tax regulations, cross-state lines borrowing. Out-of-state residents are now able to purchase a card for $50 per year. We've had a lot of ups and downs with the regional library card and the interlibrary loan.
So I have a question,
reciprocal borrowing.
because I may have steered several children wrong, that's your teaching. But our children from Donaldson's library cannot come into the Keokuk library and check out books.
If a child is from, if they have an in-city address for Donaldson, Montrose, West Point, or Fort Madison, they can come to Keokuk with their city card for their city, and we can get them a Keokuk card. If they have a 2400 350th Avenue card for whatever, they can come in, we can get them a card based on rural Lee County. So really, anybody in Lee County is still able to come in and get a card. The library's collection has grown from 7,000 volumes to 50,000, and now is at about 38,000. We do add and withdraw books based on current interest, based on relevancy. The current number is not including downloadable content. We've got about 23,000 downloadable books. That's audio, that's ebooks, picture books for kids. We've got those also. We have a total of over 60,000 items that you can borrow from the library at any time. Fine, everything is fine. People love to talk about the library fines. The library has not raised its fine rate since 1976, I believe it is. This is the 40th anniversary of the 10-cent library fine. They raised it in 1976 from 2 cents per day to 10 cents per day, which is still where it holds. DVDs are fined at $1 per item, and CDs and cake pans for 25 cents. Still, in my mind, a pretty fair rate for borrowing materials. As long as you bring them back, they're perfectly free. Automatic renewal recently began, and automatic renewal has actually decreased the number of patron fines. As long as there's no holds on your account, as long as you're in good standing, and as long as there's no one waiting for the title, your book will renew twice before fines begin to accrue. All we ask is that you call the library to make sure that you don't have any of those circumstances that would prevent it from renewing. Otherwise you might accrue a fine, but generally not. So in 2014, we marked 150 years of library service in Keokuk and 120 years of service as a public library. We marked it with a proclamation, and we had the mayor sign a document stating that June 1st through June 7th of 2014 was Keokuk Public Library Week. We had punch and cake, and we had a grand celebration, and we welcomed our patrons to come in and enjoy the event with us. Here's a copy of the proclamation for the Public Library Week that we had. And really, we have had a long history, 150 years plus of public library service in Keokuk. We're very, very fortunate to have been blessed with the patrons that we have. We're fortunate to have the staff that we have, and the board, the community support. Everyone plays a role in our library. So, next time you stop by the library, take a look around. Consider what it started out as, where it's come, where it's been. If you have any memories of the old library, we'd love to hear about them. We'd love to have you fill out a card. We're kind of trying to get a memory card box. Because memories fade. They fade very quickly sometimes. So if you have any memories of the old library, we'd love love to hear about them, especially if you have photos, we'd love to see them. You know, we don't have any, too many beyond what you've seen here, so if you have any photos of the old library, we'd absolutely love to see them. Again, thank you all so much for being part of the library tradition. I see many library patrons here, many people who support our library also. Next time you're in, stop by and say hello. I will be more than happy to see you. Does anybody have any questions about the library? I don't want to claim to know everything about it, but I'll do what I can. Yes, sir, you in the back.
Hi, we way in the back. You mentioned the first library was, I thought 25 by 35 feet. I just wanted to point out that the parlors which we're in are about 22 by 44 feet. So
Okay.
we have maybe a little narrower, maybe
Yes.
a little longer, but what we have here in space-wise is pretty much the first library. And how many volumes was that again?
About 2,500, I think.
Yeah, picture
Yeah.
2,500 books in these two
Yes.
parlors. Yeah.
Yeah, put 2,500 books in this room, and you know, and then also add in some of the huge furniture that would have been around at the time. Throw in a few periodicals, some you know, pretty much kind of the same setup that we have here, and then put books on top of it. So
Angela, I
Yes,
just want
dear.
to say, I grew up in the Keokuk library system from the time I can remember my parents were taking. And taught for 41 years, used this library extensively. We are so fortunate to have this as a tool, because a lot of communities our size
yes,
do not have one like this. This is, and the staff, I mean, it is, I've used it for a tutoring lab, I've used it for many different things.
absolutely.
It needs to be brought out in the community every day, because it is wonderful, and I'm very fortunate. And you guys do such a lovely job, especially the children, because I could go in the children's one myself,
yes.
just because, you know, I sit and talk. Yeah, I had students that go there, and I'll see them, and I'll just have to go sit and read to them.
Oh yeah, we have a great youth services program,
Yeah, it's
and the
wonderful.
summer reading program. We had over 300 children registered.
Yeah, it was dynamic.
And we have, and again, you know, we have a great support from the community that comes in, and you know, that they'll offer to sponsor books, or they'll offer to sponsor an event, or we had a musician. We had the summer reading program pool party. You know, we have all these different things and different events, and they have to be sponsored. You know, or someone has to, you know, sometimes we have to find a way to bring them to the community. So we're very, very appreciative of everything that library receives because of our patrons. So
It is a wonderful, wonderful thing.
we hear that often. People come into the library and they say, "You have a wonderful library here." I say, "You know, we haven't remodeled since the mid-90s, but it looks great because we did it right. Because we did it right with the community support that we have." So, does anyone else have questions for me?
So Angela, just to
Yes, sir.
clarify, so the building you're in now was built and you'd moved into that before the fire on Main Street, is that right?
The new library was kind of already in the works. They had started discussing what they wanted it to be, what, you know, the layout of it and everything. And then the fire took place, and it was kind of a easy transition, I guess. It was just kind of the next step of, you know, let's get into this new building.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was kind of the final closing chapter for the old building, was the downtown fire.
Okay. Thank you.
Before we go today, I would like to invite everyone to come back and join us here at the Miller House. Saturday, September 24th at 2 o'clock. We have Irene, I'm terrible with her last names, Tukuafu, I believe. Irene Tukuafu will be presenting on harps, psalters, and dulcimers. So if you have any musical inclination at all, or you're more interested in hearing about those pieces.
And she actually makes these items.
Oh, she does?
Yes, she
Okay.
does.
Wonderful. So I'm sure she'll have some things to
She's
show.
from Nauvoo, yes. Okay. Come back and see us, and actually Meryl wants to say something. And before, when you get out, of course, we've got refreshments in the other room. Help yourself, but Marilyn, actually, we're going to do.
Oh, yes. Thank you all so much for coming today.
Oh.
Who was the contractor on the new library?
Oh,
You know?
Yeah.
it was one out of Quincy.
What?
I thought our Patton did some of it.
I think Patton was involved in it. The name escapes me.
Last time you look at the trucks and stuff, I didn't.
Yeah, I know there's a couple of photos that do have the name on them. I'll have to look that up. I know it, and as soon as I see it, I'll think, yep, that's it.
You need to
It was a Quincy firm, I believe, and